Okay, we're back with more tips and tricks for Rune Factory 5 for the Nintendo Switch and PC. What's up, girls and boys? What's up, Internet? I am Vianca, and previously I've released a video on some beginner-friendly tips and tricks, which is a 33-minute video chock full of just that.
That's long enough.
Long enough.
And since that video ended up getting way too long than my original 30-minute plan, I decided to exclude a couple of tips and tricks from it, which we are now going to tackle in this even more beginner-friendly tips and tricks video. So, without further ado, let's get right to them. First up, tip number 1, prioritize walking everywhere.
Walking! I'm really good at walking.
This is something I feel like I've mentioned in passing in my pathing guide, which you can watch, by the way, by clicking on this video card right here. But if not, let me just say that walking has its perks, even when the game does allow you to use fast travel quite early on. Walking, as with pretty much most of the things you can do and will do in the game, has a skill associated with it. And the more you walk, the higher that skill level will end up being, which in turn will increase your health, rune points, and vitality every time that skill does level up. Though the increase itself is minuscule, it does eventually pile up, and if you add the other stat increases from the other skills, will make a difference further down the road. So make sure to walk as much as you can. I personally don't use the teleport option unless I'm going to the farther reach farm dragons or getting back home after a grueling adventure. If you're worried about walking eating up much of your time, then all you have to do is come up with an optimal pathing or routing that works well with you. Again, check on my pathing video to get an idea on it. Tip number 2, always bring someone along. We've already tackled a bit of the reasoning behind this, especially early on in the game in our previous tips and tricks video, but there is more to bringing companions along than just to act as dowsing rods for hidden items.
I mean, it's just an ordinary branch.
It's a dowsing rod.
There is another skill in this game called leadership, which is, as the game states, a skill that improves as you lead a party of fellow adventurers. This means that as long as you bring along someone, this skill will increase, and with it, your strength and intelligence stats as well. The higher this skill is, well, the higher the party's damage and defenses will end up being. Again, another skill with a useful payoff in the long run. Apart from that, you can do link attacks with the villagers you bring along. Link attacks or special attacks you and your companions can do together, but you will need to increase the gauges in order to execute them. Each attack you dish out adds to that bar, and once full, pressing the R button along with the left analog stick will trigger that attack, which can be a lifesaver during boss or wanted monster battles. Just remember, you need to have a good enough rapport with the villagers in order to have them join you in your adventures. Tip number 3, be versatile. Rune Factory 5, like its predecessors, offers a wide variety of weapons you can craft and use for yourself, such as short swords, long swords, spears, axes and hammers, dual blades, staves and magic, as well as fists.
And there are so many to choose from.
Each of them have their own strengths and weaknesses, and each of them having their own skill levels as well. Higher skill level unlocks dash attacks, charge attacks, and ultimate attacks for that weapon, save for staves, and also increases your max rune points and strength stats. Not to mention that the higher the levels are for your weapon skills, the stronger your attacks using that weapon will become, and the lesser rune points will be needed to trigger rune skills associated with that weapon. Being versatile also means that you will get RP and strength increases quicker, since you will not just be leveling up a single weapon skill, which can take much longer the higher the level of that skill already is. It may seem like a chore to do, especially since you may end up having a preference on which weapon to use, but the actual process is a lot quicker, especially if you target higher level monsters or do boss battles, which you can redo in this game. On to tip number 4. Add or reduce pockets. Have you ever been annoyed with wanting to use items or switch tools and weapons, but there are just too many columns in your L pocket? The bar that appears when pressing the L button?
They seem so disorganized.
I understand.
Well, you may not know this, as this can be overlooked by more impatient gamers, but you can actually customize what appears under there. To do so, simply press the plus button to open your menu and head to the bag. Select the third option, Customize L Pocket, and simply tick the checkboxes of the item category you would like to appear in your L Pocket. Personally, I went with having my weapons, farm tools, medicine, and others checked for easy tool and weapon switching, healing, and gifting. We're now halfway through this video, and before we continue, I would just like to take this moment to thank you all for the support you've been giving my channel, whether that is through comments, likes, or sharing my videos, or subscribing to my channel. Speaking of subscribing, if you haven't already, it would mean the world to me if you do, since I am aiming to get more than 5,000 subscribers before this year ends.
Over 5,000.
Well, that's the goal, Tammy.
Just hit that red subscribe button and click the bell icon if you want to get notified whenever new videos come out, and we're good to go. I really hope that we can reach that target that I set for my channel.
Let's do this.
Now, moving along, we're halfway through today's tips and tricks video with tip number 5, recovering rune points without passing time. Now, this may be something not easily noticeable, especially if you are playing Rune Factory for the first time, but rune points, as I mentioned in the previous tips and tricks video, can be recovered by merely standing still.
But there's a catch.
If you have the patience to wait for it, or eating food you cooked or bought from Lackadaisy, or taking a bath if you have the money for it. If you would like a cheaper route but you don't want to waste a couple of in-game minutes, then you can simply find a character to talk with and just leave the game in the middle of a conversation with them. Your rune points will still recover without progressing the in-game time. Of course, you would still actually need to wait for them to recover, and they will still take equally as long as when you are simply standing still. The only difference is you aren't really wasting the in-game time doing nothing. Tip number 6, the usefulness of Heinz store. Heinz, who is the owner of the Crystalabra, has a lot going from him. Apart from his penchant for speaking in puns and making jokes, he is also your go-to guy if you want to buy rune skills early on in the game or trade crystals you can feed your farm dragons. Apart from that, he also has a rotating store whose wares, as the name suggests, change each day. The cool thing about Heinz rotating store is that he will sell all the items you can get from the game, from high-level pieces of equipment, rare seeds, rare materials, you name it, he's got it. The only trouble is you can never tell what items he will be selling that day unless you go and actually visit him. So, as a tip, be sure to check his rotating stocks daily. You never know, you might end up getting lucky and finding a material that has that coveted 100% faint resistance or seeds that you have yet to unlock. Next up is tip number 7, free critical healing. This is another thing that can be overlooked, especially if you don't really like going around and talking with everybody. And I do mean everybody in this game. This is also a very nifty and literal life-saving feature in the game, provided you turned it on. If you aren't aware, there is an NPC standing close to the desk in the Seed Outpost building. Speaking with the male Seed Ranger will give you a choice on whether you would like his help or not. If you choose to obtain his aid, he will provide you with healing whenever you are critically low on health, whether that is due to combat or crafting well beyond your RP reserves, and also heal you of any status ailments monsters or food consumption may cause you. I don't think I would need to add more to say just how useful having this ranger's help can be.
Useful stuff.
Tip number 8, refight bosses daily. One thing people might not realize is that you can trigger boss battles again in Rune Factory, including this recent iteration. Likewise, bosses are also tameable, and what item they like in order to tame them are hinted when talking to specific characters. Now, what do you actually get from fighting bosses again, and in a daily manner at that?
What do I get out of it?
Well, apart from the unique drops that each bosses have, plus the experience points, whether we're talking about character levels or skill level related experience points, you will also get 30 seed points per boss battle, which will help you with renovating buildings and businesses and unlocking directives, since this is the currency you will be using for them. This is, to put it simply, a way to make it easier for you to farm seed points, especially if you couple that with doing the wanted monster list, fighting monster mobs, speaking and doing activities with villagers, completing requests, whether they're direct requests or otherwise, shipping items, and entering and winning contests, all of which gives you seed points as well. For tip number 9, we have the favorable field leveling hidden items spawn point. Man, that's a mouthful.
That was a tongue twister, dude.
Now, hidden items, as again I've mentioned in the previous tips and tricks video, can only be found either by having a companion along who can act as a dowsing rod to find these items, or by having the Foresight crest equipped, which allows you to find hidden chests and items yourself. There are many hidden item spawn points, some respawning more than once a day, others having an RNG tied to their spawning in Rune Factory 5, and each of these spawn points have specific items that you can obtain from them. For instance, the spawn point near this broken tree can spawn 3 seeds, similar to that spawn point in Kelv region. But one of the most useful spawn points I have found, though it doesn't always spawn, is the one found in this location in Furrow's Woodlands. Found near the first juncture as soon as you leave the gates of Rigbarth, this spawn point can give you field leveling items such as the Greenifier and the Formula A. From my personal experience, however, the chances of these items spawning are random, but the fact that it is quite close to a teleport location, not to mention the village itself, makes the pros of visiting and interacting with this spawn point in order to obtain these items outweigh whatever cons there might be. Granted, in the long run, crafting your own Greenifier and formulas might be easier, but for those just starting out, every freebie you can get counts. And lastly, tip number 10, or maybe I should call this as it is. a trick. Specifically, a quick trick on leveling up your crafting, cooking, chemistry, and forging skills without requiring you to hunt down any troublesome items.
Oh, that sounds too good to be true.
What you would actually just need is a scrap metal, or any scrap ores for that matter. Heck, you can even use a rock and it will work nonetheless. You also need to have at least learned a recipe for an item that is a few levels above your current skill. Now, when you have those items, head to your crafting table or your forge or whatever furniture you would like to use to create items with and pick that higher leveled recipe. In the materials used section, remove all the materials needed by pressing Y. Then select your rock or scrap metal from your bag or your storage, wherever it is that you place them. Then press the Y button again to put that in as the material to use. Increase the number to be made depending on how many rocks or scrap iron ores you have. The more you make, the higher the experience you will get, by the way. And just press OK. You will most definitely fail in your crafting, but you will still gain experience from the attempt itself. What's more, you won't lose the materials you've used, although there are times when the scrap metal ore turns into scrap metal plus, or in the case of making medicine with the chemistry set or cooking, whatever material you use will end up as a mysterious concoction or a failed dish that you can then reuse as a material to craft higher level medicine or food for this trick. Just keep doing this a couple of times, keeping an eye out on your RP and HP, and you'll see your skill level increasing quickly without really losing much or any valuable items. Well, there you guys have it, an additional 10 very useful, at least I'd like to think, things to know when playing Rune Factory 5. Again, if you guys found this video even a tad bit helpful, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button to let me know. Questions, again, are welcomed in the comment section down below. And that's it for today's video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, you guys know the drill. Dream on, fly on. Bye bye for now. Keep safe, everyone.